Okay, it's officially 3:30, and we'd like to start the regular meeting of the Forest and Beach Commission for Thursday, March 11th, 2021. Top of the order is
roll call.
Roll call. Good. I can't wait till I have a real agenda. I just lost it. My iPad, working between an iPad and a computer and a telephone is not the easiest thing to do. Okay, so let me get back to page 1. I think I'm there. All right, roll call. How about that?
Okay, Sarah Berlin. I saw her lips move, but Sarah, you're on mute.
I'm here.
Okay, Michael Cadell.
Here.
Darlene Mosley. Here. JC Myers.
Here.
And Brian Sowers.
Here.
And just a reminder to mute yourself if you're not speaking. And there are times that there's background and I may mute you. So just remember to check your little microphone at the bottom. Thank you.
All right. We're at public appearances. Members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern, not on the agenda, during public hearings, public appearances. Each person's comment shall be limited to 3 minutes or as otherwise established by the commission. Matters not appearing on commission's agenda will not receive action at this meeting, but may be referred to staff for a future meeting. Persons not required to give their names, but it is helpful for speakers to state their names so that they may be identified in the minutes of the meeting. Are there any public appearances? So there's no one that wants to speak publicly on any other subject, and we will move on to announcements. Are there any announcements?
I have one announcement. Our arborist, Milano, he and his wife had a healthy baby girl just this past couple of weeks. So congratulations to them.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And I'm sorry, my iPad is just really giving me a hard time today. Okay. Consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine in nature and do not require discussions or independent action. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of commission discussion or public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions.
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting notes.
I second it.
Can we have a roll call?
Berling.
Here, Kevin, yes.
Cadell.
Yes.
Mosley.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Sowers. passed. Thank you.
Okay. So we're moving on to public hearings. Oh, no, we're not. We have to approve the minutes of the February 11th meeting. Is that part of that was the only thing on the consent agenda. I'm sorry. We're on to public hearings, and I think this might be where I am turning it over to JC.
Oh, this is the first one or the second item?
I think it's on my agenda here. It's
item number 2, which is
it's item number 2.
Got it. Sorry. That's what you did say.
Right.
It's okay.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, real quick, Darlene, if you could state for the record why you need to recuse, then I'd suggest you turn off your microphone and your video. You can listen in the background, and we'll let you know when we're done.
Thank you very much.
You're on mute again.
I'm muted again. Sorry. The people that own the property that we're discussing are personal friends of mine, and so I don't feel comfortable. I actually, when I first started with Forest and Beach, that was the very first house we went and looked at, and I recused myself then. So it's probably very appropriate for me to recuse myself now. And I know how to turn off my mic. I'm not sure I know how to turn off my video, so I'm just going to go to the other room for a while, and I'll check back in a few minutes if that's okay.
That's fine.
Maybe at the top of your computer, Darlene, you can see there's a switch by where the camera is, and you can normally switch it left or right just with your hand if you go to your monitor. No?
I can get my husband in to help me. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead and mute yourself.
I'm
Okay. So I'll hand this over to the forester. I imagine that there's a presentation that you intend to make, Sarah? Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So our first item tonight was damage to a pine tree. The public right-of-way tree shared with 2 private properties, but the majority is in the public right-of-way. On February 8th, I was alerted that there was some excavation happening under a large pine at Casanova and 13th. I visited the site and found an excavator within the root zone of the tree, and I will show you that now. This is how I found the site. So you can see that the tree protection is up per approval. That's how it was supposed to be put up, but there's an excavator here within the critical root zone of the tree. So upon closer inspection, I discovered this large cut root very close to the tree trunk that measured from here to here about 55 inches across. So there are 2 large roots here that are merged, but it's hard to say if they weren't originally from the same source and kind of the same root. You can also see other tree roots here that are also over our 2-inch requirement, needing approval to trim. I also found on site a couple of piles of debris that had more large roots in the critical root zone. That's the last photo. Let me stop that for a moment. So that's what's happening with the tree now. So previously, as Darlene mentioned, the Forest and Beach Commission did review proposed construction for new single-family residents back in July of 2018. At the time, the commission ruled to allow the removal of 3 oak trees that would be within the footprint of the building itself. And then they also required that one of the oak trees be moved somewhere else on the property. And a condition of being able to remove those 3 oak trees and relocate the one was that if the oak tree that was moved were to die in the next 5 years, then it would be replaced with a large box tree. I did not find any mention of the pine roots in the ruling of the commission at the time. So right now, the problem ended up being that the root system of the tree was damaged to such a point that it was an imminent danger to nearby structures and the roadway, with well over 25% of its root system being cut. Now, I have to give a little bit more context than just the cut itself. Let me put the picture back up. There you go. You can see that there's a brand new garage here as well. So there's excavation along here for the driveway, as well as excavation for the foundation of the garage that continued on further to the north. So the root system of the tree, pretty much on the east side, was mostly missing. And because the root cuts were made so close to the tree trunk itself, it's disruptive to the root plate. So that's where all of the roots originate and spread out and give structural support to the tree itself. I ordered the tree out the very next morning. I couldn't leave it there with good conscience again, because it could have destroyed a structure and endangered several lives. So we had the tree taken out. It was entangled in some transmission lines. So we used our contractor that is approved to use near high transmission lines. So my recommendation is to charge the appraised value of the tree, which was valued at $9,100. That appraisal was performed by Ono Consulting. That's Frank and Justin Ono. They happened to be on the site the morning the tree removal began as well, and they also agreed that the tree should be removed. And since they had seen the tree in its healthy state prior to removal, it was appropriate to ask them to do the appraisal. I also recommend that we require the reimbursement to the city of the actual costs of the removal, which was $3,715, and also the reimbursement of the tree appraisal, which was $525, with a grand total of $13,340. So I'm happy to take any questions from the commissioners.
So does anyone from the commission have any questions for Sarah about the report that she's just given? And if you guys would use the raise your hand feature, that would be a great one to be able to see you. Like I'd call
Excuse me, this is JR.
Pardon me, JR, we're having the conversation right now.
Okay, pardon me.
This is questions we're asking to the forester about the report that she just gave, so thank you. Mike, go ahead.
Hey, Sarah, did you deal with the report that we got today, or the letter that we got today from their arborist?
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me about that, because that does correct one item in the staff report. It does confirm that their consulting arborist, Maureen Ham, was on site when the roots were initially cut. Thank you for pointing that out.
Is that it, Mike?
Well, and I guess my question is, she sort of blames you, said you acted prematurely and that the roots were badly decayed and blah, blah, blah. And I guess one question, did she have any photos of that? I didn't see any in what we got. Did you get any photos that showed decayed, dead roots or anything like that?
I did not receive any photos. And in the photos that I had included in your packet, you could clearly see that the tissue was not decayed and was alive and was still conducting water and carbohydrates. So most notably, in this picture here, you can see that this is not necrotic tissue. This is living tissue. This root down here for sure And these with the coloration on them right there, I can't tell if those wounds had just dried more or had soil on them that makes them appear gray. But the bulk of what was cut does not appear to be necrotic.
And have you had a conversation with this arborist about this issue?
No, I have not.
Okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Sowers, did you have a question?
Sarah, so again, in your presentation as well, you had cited the specifics of their plan, specific about exactly what the property owner needed to do in working with the Forest and Beach Commission and the city building department in their build regarding all of the trees, correct?
That is correct. On the cover sheet of their building plans, it states that they shall consult with the city forester, and the tree report provided by Maureen Ham from July of 2018 prior to any tree trimming or removal of trees adjacent to structures. So root pruning would be considered trimming as well. Additionally, on the standard conditions of approval in the building plan, item number 6 for significant trees, all foundations within 15 feet of significant trees shall be excavated by hand. If any roots larger than 2 inches are encountered during construction, the city forester shall be contacted before cutting of the roots. So the presence of the excavator within 15 feet of the tree trunk leads me to believe that that first condition there may have been violated, as well as I was not contacted by the contractor prior to any root cutting happening.
So in other words, then they were out of compliance with their building agreement and codes with regards to their structure build out.
Correct.
Any other questions, Commissioner? Nope. Commissioner Burling, did you have any questions about the report? Okay. Actually, as a follow-up to Commissioner Sowers' question, Forester Sarah, just to make sure, you have a voicemail on your phone, right? So if someone wants to reach out to you, they can call you, and if they don't get you for any reason, they can leave you a voicemail that you could retrieve. So just to be clear, that you didn't receive a voicemail message from the contractor asking you to come out and take a look at the project before they did anything further.
Yes, the project manager that I typically meet with on site has my cell phone number and has contacted me on my cell phone previously.
Got it, but not about this issue.
No.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no other questions from the commission for the forester and her report, then I believe we'll have a presentation from either the homeowner or the, I'm not sure if it's the builder or the arborist or who it is that's intending to speak. Do we know?
I believe that the property owner is on the line, Mr. Hunter, and I also believe that the builders are also on the line.
Got it. So then, Mr. Hunter, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for a presentation. If you would, how much time do you need to make that presentation? If you would, please let me know who intends to speak and for about how much time you need. And if you're on mute, what is it, *6? We'll give them a couple minutes to figure it out. Bob, while that's happening, just to make sure I have the order correct, we'll have the presentation from the homeowner. We'll have some questions that can be asked by the commission to the homeowner. Once that's completed, we'll open it up for public question comments.
That's correct.
Okay, just make sure. And then once that's done, we'll close it and take it back to commission.
Correct.
Thank you.
I have a phone number that just joined.
Is that you, Mr. Hunter?
No, this is Ramey.
Oh, hi there, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Mr. Hunter, if you want, it might be easier just to get off and get back on. And that way you would come in unmuted.
Sarah, you mentioned that the builder might also be in attendance. Do you have a name or?
Correct. It's Carolyn Strong, and I see here that perhaps Mr. Randy Strong is on the line.
Yeah, we actually had them in our Zoom or whatever you call this, our Google meeting. They were in the window. You saw them. Oh.
Yes, they unmuted themselves.
Oh, that is not. Oh, Mr. Randy Strong, we are having very difficult time hearing you right there.
Very
I think you
approach.
Whew, I think that I think that could be some feedback, perhaps. I'm not sure. Oh boy.
They sound like a chipmunk.
We still can't hear you. Oh man. Someone. Oh. I think that's oh.
So Randy, I think if you get off the call and rejoin, we might get a better connection and be able to hear you a little better.
Ooh, yeah, Leslie, can we mute that? Thank you. Oh, he just left.
Okay.
Okay.
Am I okay now or not?
Ah, perfect. And who is this?
This is J.R. Hunter.
Hello, J.R. Hunter. Thank you very much for getting back on. We can hear you, and if you would let us know who you intend to have in your presentation and about how much time you need, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. Okay. My name's J.R. Hunter, along with my wife, Cindy Hunter, who's on another line someplace, are the owners of the property. Also, I believe that are on this call are the principals of Carolyn Strong, the principals, Randy Strong and Jim Carroll, Ryan Laycox, who is the manager on site, and as well as, I think, John Hitchell, I think, is a third manager there. I believe there will be someone from Stowe who did the actual excavation. So with that, and I'm not sure how much time Randy will need, but I'm turning the meeting over to him. He's much more familiar with the situation than I am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hunter. And then Randy, did we get you back on?
Yeah, how does this sound? Is it any better?
Well, yes.
That sounds a lot better. Thanks so much.
Okay, I'll do *6 to mute.
Okay.
That sounds good. Well, what we have here is I'm Randy Strong, and we have Jim Carroll behind me, and Ryan Laycox was the site superintendent on site. Both Jim and Ryan were on site the day that this whole root trimming procedure took place.
No, we were there. Ryan was on site the day the root trimming took place. I was on site the next day when the inspection was done and decided to cut the tree down.
Got it. Okay. So.
Thanks. Just before you get into the presentation, about how much time do you need so we can kind of frame this so we understand what we're going to work with here?
I'd say no more than 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, let's give you 7 or 8. So just in case.
Okay.
There you go.
That sounds good.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in essence, I don't have all the details. I might want to turn it over to Ryan. But what we do know is. We did contact and we scheduled Maureen Ham to be on site with us. And we followed all the protocols that we thought were in place. We did ask Maureen if we should call Sarah. And at that time, Maureen says, no, let's not, we don't have to do that. I'm here to represent the arborists and to follow the protocols of cutting these roots. And so from the very beginning, we had Stowe Contracting on site. Yeah, he had a mini X out on site. And we also had a couple of guys hand digging all the root systems out so that we were very, very careful to try to save as much as we could. in hopes to save the tree, because the client was very adamant in wanting to save that tree at all costs. So, of course, they carefully did all the dental work around the root system. And at that point, Maureen would then direct us as to what roots to cut and how far back to cut those root systems. And she was very clear, and we were very detailed as to where that cutoff point was. Once the roots were cut from the tree itself, then the roots were pulled back by the excavator, so they were already detached from the tree itself, pulled back, so we can get to the sub base that we needed to get into that driveway. Am I missing anything, Ryan?
No.
Yeah. So at that point, we believe that we followed all the criteria. Now, the directive to contact Sarah, we called Sarah on almost 90% of everything. And in this case, we probably would have as well, but we were directed away from that. Didn't feel that it was a need, since we were directed away from that. I don't know what more to say. So anyway, after that day, of course, or later on in the afternoon, was it, Ryan?
Later on in the afternoon.
Yeah, Sarah did arrive and saw what was happening, and her report is very valid, that she made a determination that the tree was unsafe, and the next day away it went. So, any questions?
Are you going to be the only one presenting on behalf of the hunters?
Well, we can have Carl Stowe's on site. He can certainly talk about what his observation was. We were hoping to have Maureen here, but she had a family emergency that she had to attend to. She couldn't make it. It would have been really great to have her talk about her positioning here. I think the letter really speaks a lot for itself. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that, but that was basically her report.
We were presented with a letter. Thank you. Okay, so you had, I'm sorry, who is the person from SO that might want to speak before we would address you with any questions? I just want to have you make your full presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really all we have. Carl, if you can go ahead, unmute and talk, that'd be great. I think he's still there.
Well, I'll go ahead and open it up to the commission for any questions specific to the presentation that's been made on behalf of the hunters. It looks like Commissioner Sowers, you've got a question. Your hand is up.
Yeah, so just because I obviously live in Carmel, and I can see that Strong and Carroll does a lot of work in the city. And I mean, again, going back to my initial questions to the forester, the building plans were very specific about the fact that the city forester needed to be contacted on any cutting that was going on in that house. And I would imagine that the Forest and Beach Commission that was here previously that had allowed the other trees to be taken off property and taken down, I think we're being very courteous to the owner on his rebuild. And I'm struggling with the fact that city plans were very specific about what needed to happen with regards to trees, and that a contractor that has the plans in their hands and follow these plans would kind of caveat the decision making to an arborist that again is hired by the owner to allow that person to be making decisions for the city when it in many respects, as I understand it from the city forester, that this was probably 75% sitting in the public right of way anyway, so that the owners of both the properties that it straddled were really, they only had a 25% ownership in the tree as well. So it really more or less was a public tree. I'm just a little struck that someone who does a lot of work in Carmel wouldn't have followed those plans to the T and had the city forester make any decisions around whatever was going to go on with that tree.
So, I'm sorry, Commissioner Sowers, what was your question regarding the presentation then?
So my question is really about the fact of that as the builders of the property, that you guys follow a plan, and the plan had very specific requirements as a part of what was going on with any particular roots on the subject property. Yet my question was, but you guys are allowed an arborist that was hired by the property owner to make that decision when it was the city's decision to be made. Is that correct?
This is
No.
J.R. Hunter. Can I say something?
Go ahead, JR.
Yeah, real briefly. I had, one is we're familiar, or have been familiar with the city rules. When we moved the tree that was recently mentioned, we had the arborist who was temporary then to come out to make sure, because we had this root issue. So I don't believe, so we understood that. In my conversation with her, with Maureen, it appears that based on her report, which was given back in 18, and also conversation with Mike Branson, who was then the forester, that we basically, she thought it was approved. That may be a standard procedure, but I think that what I'm trying to say to you is there certainly was no overt part on our part or anyone, I think, to avoid or evade dealing with the city. Along with this, we also, in preparation for the driveway, spent quite a bit of time with the city identifying the appropriate stone, which was permeable, that could be put on there. And numerous people were out there. So, I mean, for whatever it's worth, there was certainly no intent on anyone's part that I'm aware of as the owner to mislead or to go counter to what the city had done. In fact, when and I met Mike Branson several times, and he was at the property several times, way back when we started this. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sowers, does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Cadell, you had a question?
Yes. Again, going back to your arborist's letter, where she claims that the root that was exposed was in fact dead and decaying, do you have any photos that confirm that? Is it?
Go ahead, you.
I'm sorry, is that a yes or a no?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
And so I guess my problem is it's hard for us to believe. I mean, so it just is a coincidence that just the place where you wanted to cut, to put in the driveway and take out a lot, 25% of the root structure for that tree, that just happened to be dead and decaying? Because the tree itself looks pretty good. Or it did, when it was still in the public right of way.
Definitely agree. We agree with that. Really what we try to do is we look to the experts to tell us what to do. We're not arborists. We have a city approved arborist that's hired by our client, and she gave us direction. So what we did is we followed the letter of the law. The one step that we missed, and it sounds like we should have kind of gone around our arborist, and that is to call Sarah firsthand. Outside of that, we've had a plan that we were going to put this driveway in for 2 years. And here we are. We've had multiple meetings talking about how we're going to coordinate and get this thing put in. And when the time came and when we actually expedited the work, I'm finding it a total surprise that everybody is thinking that, we couldn't, at this point, how do we not, remove tree roots to get this driveway in? And even when you look at Branson's video and his report back in July 12th, his point was, we do this all the time. Cutting back roots in this fashion is something we do all the time. And and of course, we've been in this business quite often, and we work with trees all the time in Pebble Beach, the preserve, Tehama, and we always have an arborist on site directing us in doing this properly. Nothing was ripped out; it was cut clean, and then exposed. And then the arborist, of course, during that time is observing and giving us direction entirely. Now, if in fact, I can't tell you whether those roots were decayed or not decayed. I don't know, but Maureen Ham, who's been in this business a long, long time, would probably have pictures, or she would be the one to identify it. Regardless whether they're decayed or not. I'm kind of challenged to find out how in the world could we have made this happen otherwise. So I guess we would have had to tear the garage out and start over. But you know, it's something that it's always been in the plan to do so, to get this thing done. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Strong. Commissioner Cadell, did that answer your question?
Yeah, not really. But I guess the one other question I have that follow up to that, you're not suggesting that Mike Branson gave you authority because it wasn't in the application. So you're not suggesting that you had authority from the city to cut those roots like that?
No, we got authority from Maureen Ham.
Well, you understand the permit is not issued to Ms. Ham, and the application to remove those trees is not issued to Ms. Ham, right?
I'm sorry, to remove the tree? We weren't intending to remove the tree, but
no, the application that was submitted to remove the oak trees. And I remember going and looking at that property a couple of years ago. Yeah. And actually, I remember Mike Branson saying that it was going to have to be handled carefully around that tree to avoid damaging those roots.
Sure.
Because it's a very significant tree, and it's mostly in the public right of way. So I just want it clear on the record, unless you have something that we don't have, that there was nothing in the application that went to the Forest and Beach Committee or in our commission a couple of years ago, or in the paperwork that indicated you had authority to cut those roots in that manner.
Michael, I don't have the answer to that right now. I'd have to turn to JR for that. And do you recall anything other than what we've had here, Ryan?
No.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get back to you, Michael, because I don't know. But I know this: we certainly wouldn't have, cut these roots intentionally without some kind of an approval process. Maybe, I don't know, Michael. This is something I don't have an answer to. We may have something, I just don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
that's all I had, JC. Thanks.
Thanks. And then Director Harari? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have three quick questions. Hopefully they're quick. The first one is to Mr. Hunter.
Yes.
I wanted to confirm that back in 2018, that you recognized that there was no authorization to remove this tree and that you, in fact, were required to protect that tree. Is that correct?
I didn't hear you say that again.
Back in July of 2018, when we went to the Forest and Beach Commission, I remember this well, I was there. Do you recall? Yes, there was three trees were allowed to be removed. One was to be relocated, but at that meeting, it was stated that the remaining trees were to be protected in place, and that particular tree was not called for to be removed. So the duty was to protect and keep that tree. Is that your understanding?
Well, I don't remember specifically about that tree. I agree with your other comment. Yes, we had approval there were certain trees that we were allowed to take out, and then there was a tree that we moved. Okay, yes. Okay,
and then the next couple of questions are for the contractor, the representatives. So you're alleging that Maureen Ham dictated or directed you to recut the roots at that certain location that you did. However, were you aware of the conditions of approval and the notes on the plans that said the opposite, that you had to get city forester approval prior to cutting roots over 2 inches? So in other words, did you dismiss the notes on the plans and just listen to the arborist instead?
We did not. We did not dismiss it, at least not intentionally. That note wasn't brought to our attention until afterwards.
Then who made the decision to go with what Maureen was saying as opposed to what was in the plans?
I don't have the plan in front of me, Robert. Sorry, but again, I will just say that we did everything to protect those roots during the course of construction from day one. There wasn't a piece of equipment on that. Later, as we were planning on moving toward the direction of getting into that driveway, the directive from us to us was to have a Maureen Ham on board. She was the arborist of record, as far as I know, to observe the cutting of those roots and to do that in a delicate manner, which we did. So that, I don't know if that answers your question, Robert. The only thing I can tell you is the note about calling the city or the other commission. That was not apparent to us. If it was, it's a simple call. We have no skin in the game other than to do the right thing.
Well, one last question, a quick question. We'll be talking to Maureen directly to get her response to this question, but I'm asking for your opinion.
Sure.
In your opinion, did Maureen represent to you to be a representative of the city? That she had city approval to tell you what to do?
Absolutely, 100%.
She did.
Oh, I'm sorry. In our meetings, yeah, we believe that she represented the city correctly.
Okay.
In fact, very clear, she felt that the tree was not in danger. So
I think that's where things got wrong, because she's not representing the city. Thank you.
Okay.
That's okay, thanks. And are there any more questions from the commission? Commissioner Burling, did you have any questions? No, then I have one question, well, actually two questions for the builders. Thank you again for your presentation. How long have you guys been building in Carmel? I know you guys mentioned Tehama and Pebble Beach and the preserve, and how long have you guys actually been building in Carmel-by-the-Sea?
Well over 30 years.
And how many houses have you built, do you think you would guesstimate in Carmel-by-the-Sea?
Oh, God. How many did we say? 20? 20 or 30 for sure, at least. Oh, yeah, 20 houses. Yeah.
And then then you've had lots of interaction with both the forest and beach, and obviously planning in terms of execution of building. So you're experienced with the process, right?
We are.
Got it. Okay, thanks. I don't have any other questions, and so then I'm going to open it up to the public for comments or questions. I think this is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Director. Is public allowed to actually ask questions directly to either the forester or to the presenter, or is this just an opportunity to make statements? Can't hear you.
They can certainly ask a question, and it's up to the commission to determine if you want the commission or staff to answer it if we can.
Got it. Okay. So with that, thanks. Appreciate it. So I'm standing in there as the vice chair. So with that, I'm going to open it up to public comment. And if we could keep those comments to under 3 minutes, if you wouldn't mind stating your name for the record, you don't have to, but it helps us in terms of keeping track. Then we'll go ahead and open it up. Anyone have from the public any comments or questions?
This is Ramie Allard with the Friends of Carmel Forest.
Hello there, Ramie.
I'm once again devastated by the loss of this tree, and I don't understand why a consulting arborist would have been okay with cutting those roots. And I don't understand why the contractor would have put up the protective fencing and jumped around the roots of that tree for the time leading up to cutting the driveway in, and then just cut right through the roots. Once again, there has to be someone from the building department there when these moves are done. This happens every month at the Forest and Beach meetings, where something's taken down and then we slap the project with a hefty fine, or it's just so sad. Something has to be done.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Ramey. Are there, just as a side note, if you are listening, would you please put yourself on mute so that the feedback doesn't kick back into the audio? Thank you, appreciate that. Any other comments from the public? Do we see anyone else? Maybe I'll wait for a minute out there for people that might be trying to star six themselves. Okay, well, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment section and then bring this back to commission for discussion. So with that in mind, I'm going to open it up. And if you would like to just raise your hand and we can go around and have a discussion about the information that's been presented. Anyone care to kick it off?
Yeah. Is there any way we can reach this, I forgot what her name is, last name's Ham, by telephone or anything to get her opinions of what happened? Because she has to know also, I'm sure she's read the same thing that everybody else has read about having the city forester there. So how this, I mean, clearly that connection is the big problem, and it would be really useful to have. I mean, can we call her?
If I may, the commission may defer this meeting or continue the meeting to the next meeting, and hopefully we would have opportunity for Ms. Ham to be present at that future meeting. But I don't think we should call her on the phone right now and surprise her.
Okay.
And I do believe that the builder said that she had had some sort of a family emergency.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Right. Commissioner Burling, any other comments in general about what's been presented for us here?
Well, it has the uncomfortable feeling of being a handy way for them to handle it, rather than having to go through Sarah Davis and figure a better way of doing it, perhaps.
Thank you. Okay, I see Commissioner Cadell, your hand is up. Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm frustrated, like Ramey and I think others, and frankly, it is not credible to me that a builder who's been in the business for 30 years in this area and doesn't look at the plans. The builder looks at the plans every day. And for the builder to say they were not aware of the responsibility when they're cutting roots on a tree that's got orange netting around it and is protected, and it's on the city's, primarily, it's most of it on the city's right of way. I think all of this is too convenient by half. And then the arborist supposedly says that she represents the city, which is just no one, that's not believable. That is not credible. And unfortunately, we don't have a mechanism to prohibit people like this from working in Carmel-by-the-Sea. I wish we did, because, you know, there needs to be some sort of penalty system where you, and not a penalty system, but a system where we say 3 strikes and you're out, and you can no longer operate in this city. Because frankly, what we're talking about, $13,000, when homes in that area are millions of dollars each, they're probably spending, who knows what they're spending to build this house. This is a classic situation where somebody says, better to ask forgiveness instead of asking for permission, because they knew they wouldn't get the permission. And they wanted to put that driveway in and do it the way they wanted to do it. And they cut those roots, and I'm sure hoped they would get away with it. And, you know, the builders' protestations are not persuasive to me, because if you're in the business and you know how treasured trees are in this small city, and that was a magnificent Monterey pine, for them to have cut those roots like that, and then not to have proof. If they claim that the roots were diseased or dead or decaying, then they needed to show us that. But they should never have cut them to begin with. So I'm really offended. When we got the report of this, I wrote the city forester and said, because her report did not identify the builder or the homeowner or the excavator, the sub. And I asked her specifically for those names because I want to, we need to start keeping a list of something, because I've had it. I mean, in the past year, we have had multiple instances of people basically thumbing their nose at the requirements that are imposed on them to operate in this city. And then they just go on their way and get another job, another multi-million-dollar job, and we'll cut down another tree. And so we've got to find a way to stop this. And it's not going to do it to take a 100-foot tree and we say that's only going to cost $13,000 to take it out. I'm just really offended. I don't want to take any action today. I would prefer that we defer this until the next meeting. I hope there's a stop work order at the job. And I would prefer, like Commissioner Burling, I'd like to see Ms. Ham here and have her explain how it is that the builder could think she somehow represented the city in making a decision like this. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Sowers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of right on there with Michael. I think that I'm kind of frustrated with the fact that, we have people that have worked in the city this long and are dealing with these issues all the time. And yet in this case, there goes another nice Monterey pine. And I think we've got, I think as a commission, or whether the city council gets involved, we've got to come up with some system of accountability for both the owner, the builder, the arborist, or whatever, that, otherwise we're going to get trees knocked down right and left here. I mean, I just think there's more opportunity for people to get a valuation boost by opening up a viewpoint or taking a tree out and getting more room on their property, that if we don't have an appropriate accountability and penalty position more than what we are currently doing, we're just going to see more and more trees go bye-bye. I do think that, waiting for the arborist, I guess, is okay. I'm not sure that it enlightens us any much more with regards to the issue, that we feel that in this particular case, that there really wasn't a concern. And as I said, they were just waiting for forgiveness on this versus, protecting the tree. So I guess we could push off the meeting. I'm just not sure hearing back from the arborist is gonna make a lot of difference in my mind about my position on this.
Got it. Okay, then I'll go ahead and make some comments. First, I would like to acknowledge and an appreciation that the homeowner, the hunters, actually hired an arborist to be a part of the project. I think that's admirable. It was a significant project. And of course, I wasn't a part of the commission at this time, but to me, it's great that someone is concerned about the trees on their property and wants to do the right thing. And that's that. As it relates to the builders have clearly stated that they reached out to Maureen, that they asked her to come to the site, that when she was on the site, that she instructed them to go ahead and remove the roots with a chainsaw. In her letter, she acknowledges as much. And for me, I don't really know why we would need to bring her back to have her tell us that that's what she told them, because it isn't, I think, as it was perhaps stated by our director, that the permit wasn't, or maybe it was Commissioner Cadell, the permit wasn't issued to the arborist. It was issued to the homeowner and the builder to build, and the stipulations were clearly laid out. It specifically states that the forester needs to be contacted first, and that nothing was to be done until the forester would actually come in and be on site. So from my perspective, I think we can move forward and make a ruling based off of the recommendations from the forester. To everyone else's point in regards to this continuous abuse of our forest and the notion that, hey, I'll just ask for forgiveness, right? I don't like it at all. And I agree that there should be some sort of a business permit review. And I think in the past in the city that there has been something in place like that. We need to, or that needs to be brought back to the city council or perhaps to the city administrators so that we can establish some sort of a strikes or an evaluation of those who are wanting to operate in our city. Because again, these builders 20, 30 plus or 30 plus years building in Carmel-by-the-Sea, over 20 homes, they know. And you heard Mr. Strong say, how would I have been able to put this driveway in? Everyone knows there's no way I could have done it otherwise. I would have to change okay, so he's admitting like, hey, there was no other way to do it, so we just went ahead and did it, right? And okay, so from my perspective, I think that the recommendation that the forester has made, I don't think it's severe enough personally. I think that the value of the tree, when you look at the breakdown, and perhaps Forester Sarah, you could put the ONO's appraisal on the screen, but if I'm not mistaken, the value of the tree was $46,000. I'm trying to understand how that evaluation or how the appraisal was put together. And sure, the ONOs have stated that the condition of the tree was fair, and I believe that the reasoning was the way in which the PG&E has gone through and taking limbs out, et cetera. But in my opinion, I would be willing and I would like to move forward with the recommendation of the forester, but then I would like to double this penalty, really, and as a penalty that is one that we need to continue to get out to the community of builders, that this is it's not okay to come and ask for forgiveness. And still at the end of the day, when you're talking about I don't know how many $1 million home build this is, and it's not a spec home. I realize that it's perhaps it's not really very much money, but we need to send a signal to the community. So that's my opinion and my conversation there, and then I'll kind of bring it back to the group. Does anyone have any other thoughts, or is the intent from the rest of the commission to want to defer this?
Did you want me to say something about the appraised value?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So plans appraisal can be a tricky thing. And there's 3 different methods that you can use to place a value on the tree. And they use the reproductive technique. So basically, how much does it cost to get a new tree and grow a new tree and determine a value based on that? So there's different methods, and based on the method that you use, you can get a higher or a lower appraised value. You choose the technique that most makes sense for the condition you're presented with. From there, you look at a regional value for trees. So Monterey pine is typically not seen as a urban tree. It's more of a timber stand tree. So it wouldn't have as great of a value as your typical city tree would, like a London plane tree or a linden or a big maple. So inherently the pine is always going to appraise lower than we would intuitively think it should. Okay, thanks. And then that $46,000, right below in the kind of in the final valuation of what they determined the value of the tree was, there was I'm sorry, I'm trying to read this off of my phone. I got it.
What is that number? What is that number?
Okay, is this what you're looking at?
I am, right. So, right, that number there in is that line 10? Is that 10?
Yes, and then there's deductions taken against it.
Understood,
So,
but does line 10 mean that had there not been any deductions, that's the value of the tree? Is that how I'm to understand that number?
yes.
Got it. So again, back to my point, I
I would
feel,
also I would add that you need to subtract line 11 from line 10
okay.
for the depreciation that would go into the replacement cost.
So I guess where I went and from in my discussion, as from my perspective, I felt as if there's the value, the penalty is it's not significant enough to really send the message. This tree, 46 less 8, has a strong, $38,000 value in good health. And I think that we should be sending a more significant message to the builder and then to the community at large. That's my take, but it's open for the commission to move forward on any kind of a motion. Yes, Commissioner Cadell.
I just want to be sure I understand, because as I look at the chart, and Sarah, you can correct me, but you have the replacement cost, which is the 46 minus the 8. But then after that, you have additional costs. So the whole thing winds up being back at about 46 to 47, 48,000. Is that right? Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So
the real cost for the reproduction of that size of a tree is the 45.7, but you'd actually have to buy a tree and take care of it and some extra items that go along with it. So that's where the 12, 13, and 14, well, the replacement, the clean out, the aftercare would come into play.
Okay. So then what, and I'm willing to defer on bringing Ms. Ham back, because I agree it probably would not be very satisfying anyway. Just be more frustration. So what would the city forester's recommendation be with respect to a total penalty of the value of the tree, the city arborist, the consulting arborist, the tree removal, et cetera? What's the whole amount that we would be assessing?
Based on my
city forester's recommendation.
Yeah, based on my initial recommendation, it would be $13,340. That includes the appraised value, the cost of the removal, and the cost of the appraisal.
Okay. Now, if we chose to go with a different valuation expressed in this report, which is the reproduction cost and the additional costs, then it would be, instead of $13,000, it would be roughly $47,000 plus another $4, about $51,000. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, in that case, unless, I can make a motion, or I will make a motion. I move that we assess the homeowner the cost of the replacement tree as identified in the ONO report, which is line 10, less the depreciated reproduction cost, plus the replacement tree installation, the aftercare, and line items 12, 13, and 14, which would be a total, which would result in a rough total of $47,000, plus the other cost, the tree removal cost, plus the cost of the consulting arborist itself, which would be another $4,000 for a total of $51,000 in assessment.
Okay, Mr. Chair, can I make a comment before it's seconded?
I think that makes sense. Yes, go ahead, Director.
Going back to Sarah, well, we have to be careful because the commission cannot charge a penalty. It cannot assess a punitive type of penalty. It can require replacement of city costs, like the removal cost, the arborist cost, the valuation of the tree, et cetera, or even mitigation to plant additional trees or things of that nature. But you can't assign a penalty at this point, although I'm working with the city attorney's office on this very issue. My question, though, is for Sarah. How come we're using the $9,100 valuation and not the $45,000 minus $8,000 valuation? That's if the 45 minus 8 is the real number, then I think we would be changing the approach that we've done in the, we're going into the new frontier. So can you please explain why one number is 45,000 and one is 9,000?
Right, so the reproduction cost is defined as the cost to replace an improvement with an exact replica. So if it was possible to take an exact tree like that and buy it, that's how much it would be. That's potentially how much it could cost. But since that's not really possible, we look at what it would take to start to get something to replace what was lost. And we devalue some of that based on health, structure, and form. So this is one of the newer methods to the industry that was codified within the last 3 years. So up until then, we mostly had used the trunk formula method. So if you're looking at apples to apples, the basic reproduction cost would be the value of the tree.
So then I'd like to propose a friendly amendment to Commissioner Cadell's motion, and that would be that the assessment by the Onos was that the condition of the tree was fair, and then they put a percentage on that, which I believe was 60%. And perhaps Forester Sarah, you could correct me if I'm wrong there. That being said, if the tree value, replacement value is $47,000, then I suggest we fall in line with what the appraisal says is fair and take 60% of that value as this assessment to the builder or the applicant anyway.
So you're asking me, would it be valid to take the basic reproduction cost and reduce that by 40% so that it matches the condition, the functional limitations for the tree? So basically it would be saying that if this was a tree worth X, but it was kind of in bad shape, then you would discount it by the percentage. So are you saying the basic reproduction costs less the reciprocal of 60, which would be 40%?
That's correct. That's what I'm suggesting as a friendly amendment.
And I'll accept that amendment, and the amount would be $28,200.
Correct.
To which you would add the cost of removing the tree and the consulting arborist fee, which would be an additional $4,000 thereabouts for $32,200.
And are we asking in this motion for a tree replacement as well, an actual tree replacement, or no? Is that going to be the city that will handle that since it's predominantly a city tree?
My understanding is that the city would be handling that, but I defer to the city forester if she had a recommendation.
The hunters have submitted a new landscape plan for the property, which includes several new trees to be planted already.
Okay. So then I think I would just go with the assessment for the replacement. And I want to be clear that this is based on the consulting arborist's recommendation and assessment appraisal, and no part of this is intended to be a penalty or punitive. This is simply a replacement cost as calculated by an outside consultant to the city, discounted to reflect the fair condition of the tree.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, then Leslie, are we in a position to go ahead and take a vote?
Yes. For links.
Oh, yes.
Cadell.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Sowers.
Yes.
Cass, thank you.
Okay, and that concludes that, and then I will hand this meeting back over to our chairman. Chairman Mosley, are you in earshot, hopefully? This has been very stressful.
It's very stressful. Thank you. Thank you. The next order of business is number 3, public hearings. Tree planting requirements for a new development on the southwest corner of Dolores Street and 5th Avenue. So, Sarah, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, I do. So, just a brief overview. I was going to bring up the graphics here. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the incompleted construction at the corner of Dolores and 5th. That would be the southwest corner. Now, a new developer is proposing a new building that would fill the parcels. This is the footprint. There'll be a center courtyard, but all of this is on top of a parking structure. This is what it would look like from the street. This would be the Dolores view. This would be the 5th Avenue view. So just so you have an idea of what we're potentially looking at. Based on the code and tree density recommendations, any parcel that is over 8,000 square feet, it goes to the Forest and Beach Commission to decide how many trees should be planted. So this is where I get really nerdy because I like this stuff. So in an urban setting, it can be very difficult to grow large trees. We happen to have some very interesting trees in town that are growing in the urban core by happenstance and happy mistakes. So we have these trees that are surrounded by asphalt, which is a little bit flexible. We have some bump outs. We have some very small squares with trees exploding out of them. To establish new trees, it really takes uncompacted soil volume. And I think we've talked about this in the past. So there are techniques that can be used to provide that uncompacted soil volume for the tree roots to grow and still allow for all of the required paving surfaces for ADA compliance, walkability, and usability. And we call those structural cells. Did everyone look at the document I sent you before? Yes, I got 1 yes. I got 2, 3, yay. Okay, so the structural cell is a cube. It's a stackable, highly engineered cube. So you can put them underground, then you can fill them with soil, plant your tree into that nice soil, and then on top, you can put decking on top of those cubes that turns into your paving surface. And those could be permeable pavers, they could be concrete, they could be whatever. And they're engineered to such a way that they are compliant with emergency vehicles. We don't have buildings over 5 stories here, so our fire trucks don't have outriggers. So we would be fine in terms of the durability of a structural cell being used in our right-of-way. So what I'm suggesting is that we ask the developer to come back to the commission with a more fleshed out landscape plan that looks at using the right-of-way as an innovative planting space and potentially using one of these structural cell concepts. Based on pure measurement, if trees were 35 feet apart, there's potential for there to be 8 trees, but there are limitations to that with utility boxes and driveways and several other factors. So I think we can hope for 8. We might not be able to get to 8, but I think that would be a good challenge goal to put out there. So I'm recommending that the commission asks the developer just to come back with a plan for the landscape and potentially some infrastructure upgrades for the public right-of-way that will allow us to grow bigger trees.
Does the commission or anyone
You muted yourself again.
I didn't.
One more time. God, okay, there, now talk.
So funny, you guys.
Yeah.
This thing, the little line through the microphone will not go away. I'm pressing the button. I'm here. Okay. Does anyone have questions for Sarah? How about JC?
Thanks. Sarah, do you recall what trees were a part of the prior development? Did you happen to access or see any of that information?
I did not go looking for that, but from what I've understand, it was recommended that 4 new trees be planted, but I'm unaware. Evan Court, who is the planner on this project, is also on the line, so we can ask him some of those questions about the history.
Okay, and one other question. As it relates to in the architectural renderings, the planters that they've identified through the middle of the, what are they suggesting, or did they suggest how large those would be and what they would be able to be put in there? I read you're suggesting because of the nature of the, I guess the light levels, it really be difficult to grow anything significant, but I'm just curious if they've identified what they thought they would be able to grow in those.
Initially, on some renderings that were shared with the community, there were some palms that were proposed for those planters. But again, this is on top of a parking deck. So to get something to be very large in one of those planters, the parking deck has to be designed to carry the weight of the plant, the soil, and all of the water that the soil can hold. And because of the light constraints, I'm not sure there's going to be very much that can be very successful in that shaded courtyard in terms of trees.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments before is anybody here to make a presentation from the developer?
I believe I've seen several on the call.
I think our architect Henry is here. Let's give him a chance to make comment, please.
Okay.
He said that he would like to present, so let me figure out. Hey, Leslie, can you give me a hand about how I can let Henry present?
I think he does the same thing you do. On the bottom of his screen, it says share his screen.
We're present now. Henry, do you see that?
Can't wait till we're back in the chambers.
I do not have any controls to limit who presents.
It's in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen.
Give me, I'm going to try and reach out to him with the phone, make sure he's not having issues with his computer or something. Give us 1 minute. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
If you look for 3 little dots, the share screen should come up.
I know he's online and on the call because he put in the chat that he would like to present. So I have good faith that he can make it happen.
Maybe he can email the presentation to you and you could share it.
Sorry, bear with us just a few more moments.
Oh, I just got word from the planner that the plan for the previous development, hang on, had 7 trees. The ones already in the planters bumped out on 5th. So 5 on Dolores, total excluding the 2 that were already on 5th. So 5 on Dolores was the previous plan. Okay, Henry says that he would like to call in. And Henry, the call-in number and the PIN is in the Google appointment, so it'll be in your calendar. And I will also try to pull it up and put it in the chat for you. Actually, Leslie, that's not true. Let's see here. Oh, there it is. Nope, I found it. Okay. Okay, I am dropping the call-in.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, sure can.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I seem to have been having obviously technical difficulties, but I appreciate the patience of everyone. My name's Henry Runke. I'm with Wald Runke and Dost Architects, and we're the architects on the project. Just give you a little bit of background. This used to be called the Del Dono Court Project, and we are basically redesigning the project completely. There are parts of the parking garage that are currently under construction or had been under construction. We're going to be building on top of much of that. The original plan did have a proposal for all new sidewalk and tree planting. The original plan had a total of 5 trees to be added along Dolores, and there were 2 trees that were going to be added on 5th, which all of those would be new trees, and then there are 2 existing oak trees on 5th that would remain. So as far as the streetscape goes, there would be a total of with old and new trees, there would be 9 total. We have looked at that, and with 9 trees, that would mean that we would be adding 7 more. We think that that's a fairly reasonable number. And the reason why we think it's reasonable is, one, it was previously approved that way. But even if you disregard that, what we've looked at is that the sidewalk, particularly on Dolores, has a lot of utilities that exist. We've got PG&E vaults, we have water meters from Cal-Am, we have other things such as telephone, cable TV, those types of boxes. So some of them, it's possible that we could slide them around a little bit. But for example, a PG&E box today in the world of PG&E could take literally 2 years to get PG&E engineering and moving things. So we'd prefer not to move those around. Likewise with the Cal-Am meters, Cal-Am is not allowed to set new meters, so we can't touch those. If we move them, that's considered setting a new meter, and so we would need to work around those. Now, the good thing is that even working around these utilities, it still gives us a nice rhythm on the street. And I think we can get 5 trees along Dolores. I think, as Sarah has mentioned, using the structural cells is definitely a possibility, and it's something that we are going to do. The areas that we would be able to do would be between a lot of the areas where we have utilities, so it wouldn't be coming down the entire strip of Dolores, for example. We would have those cells interrupted. And then on top of that, we're looking at doing a set of impervious or pervious pavers, so that not only would you have less compacted material around the tree roots, but we would also be allowing more water to get into the trees. I think another argument for 7 new trees is hopefully these are going to be much healthier than other replacement trees or street trees that have been set over time. And my guess is that they're going to be more vigorous in their growth, and hopefully we'll have a more mature canopy over time. This is we haven't submitted a formal landscape plan at this time. We're still in process on that. And we have an architect from Santa Cruz who will probably be finishing up his work in the next week or 2. And then we'll be making a submittal to the planning department on that. There has been a desire by the owner to be able to look at some type of nice planting in the project itself. We will be showing you some roof decks that have planting, large planter areas, both on the top level, on the 2nd floor, and then in the plaza areas. If there's a way to practically put some trees that can still grow with the limited amount of soil depth that we're looking at, we will bring those to you. If that doesn't work, we'll take Sarah's suggestion of doing something more ornamental and more planter-like. But this is kind of a good check to meet everyone, even though you can't see me, and to just give you a little bit of an idea of where we are in process. And I believe that it was the recommendation of city staff to come before you, get some guidance, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up our landscape plan and make the formal submittal so that you have something more meaningful to review. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone with any questions? And anyone in the public want to make comment? JC?
Thank you. Thanks, Henry, for your presentation. I appreciate that. Just to be clear, you said that you, as it relates to the structural cells, that it's something that you would do, you intend to do. Did I just get clarity on that? I realize that you haven't submitted your landscape plan, but it's just, thanks.
Yeah, so the intent is to do that. What we have to look at is the actual constructability that we're looking at right now. We're still coordinating things like trying to figure out exactly how our site utilities are going to work and some of the other obstructions. I know that when we originally talked to Sarah about this, her desire was to have some very, long lengths of uncompacted areas. I don't think we're going to be able to achieve the types of distances that we were talking about originally. So, but we will be able to do something, and we just want to make sure that we can do something meaningful and something that can actually be built without too much problem.
Thank you.
So to answer your question, yes, we want to make all efforts we can to make that happen. And we'll work with you and the forester to see if we can accomplish that.
Does anyone else have any comments, questions?
I would just like to, one more point is that this site is 16,000 square feet. So if we looked at the recommendations for a lot that's 8,000 square feet, that would require 9 trees. So if we doubled that, that would be 18 trees or more that the commission could require. I'm just pointing that out because even though we might be getting less trees, the infrastructure that goes in place is an investment in a larger tree in the future. So that's why I didn't put forth any suggestions about in lieu of fees to meet a higher number of trees, because the investment would go into the infrastructure instead of planting more trees somewhere else in town.
And do we open this up to the public?
We can't hear you. You're on mute. Okay.
I'm unmuted. Would the public like to have any comment?
Ramy, did you want to say anything?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm okay. Good. I'm battling here between phone and iPad, so I'm thrilled to find out that the iPad actually works for the voice as well. I would just ask that that we see the landscape plan when it is completed, and that we have an opportunity to evaluate it before it gets approved.
All right, I think that's great. Is there do we have to take any action on this, or?
Well, I think if you want to close the public comment period and then bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Let's close the public comment period unless there's anyone else in the public that wants to comment.
There is a recommendation from the forester that the commission may want to adopt or modify.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make my first comments amongst the commission, if that's okay with everyone. First of all, I think that it's great to have heard from the architect here, and it really sounds to me like their intention is good, and that they're on board with bringing a landscape plan back to the forester and the commission. I think those are really positive things here. I think that having remembered what existed at this site before the big, huge hole, that the improvements to this property, and especially with these new plans, I'm very excited about seeing this through. And I like what the forester presented with us in terms of helping us understand what the sidewalkscape can be like and what the future of that is. And it sure sounds like the architect is on board with that as well. I think those are great things. As it relates to the recommendation from the forester and then listening to the architect, I feel like we could certainly compromise with the notion of 7 trees as opposed to firm 8. And why don't we see the plan? And if it just doesn't look adequate, then come back and say, hey, we need another tree. And I know the forester mentioned to us that by lot size we have X number upper canopy, X number lower canopy. I want to point out though that actually tree density that falls under section 1748080 for tree removal and replacement. That's removal and replacement, and that's where we come in with our density opinions. And I think in this instance, that's why I was asking if anyone recalled the original, what was there before, because I don't remember any trees anywhere around that entire catastrophe of whatever that building-ish thing was. Someone can here in the commission, that'd be great. But that there is a plan for more trees, and that we've got an architect that's excited about it, and sounds like he's well aware of some of the more innovative ways. I think that's good news. So that's all I have to say.
And I don't think we need to discuss it anymore today. It sounds as though they'll be making progress, and that's what we need to see, not what the plan is at this point. So I'd like to put it off to when they come back with their plan.
Okay. So do we have to show that on record? Do we put that in our minutes that we're going to wait for further review when they do a presentation, I guess when they're further along with their planning?
I think Mike's raised his hand.
What'd you say?
I don't see Mike's hand. I'm sorry. Who needs to?
I can't understand what you're saying.
I think the easiest thing to do for the record is I would simply make a motion that we accept the city forester's recommendation, which will result in their giving a more fully fleshed out plan, and then they'll bring it back to us.
I'll second that.
All right. Can we have a roll call on that? Do we need to vote on it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Can everybody just Burling?
Yes, I think so.
Cadell?
Yes.
Mosley?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Towers?
Yes.
Pass. Thank you.
All right. The next thing on our agenda is to go into orders of business, and the first one is an Arbor Day planning discussion. And does Sarah want to start off with? We've been planning this for a while. We unfortunately didn't get to do it last year, so we'd love to do it this year.
Yeah, so we have an Arbor Day observation every year. It's one of the 4 requirements to keep our Tree City USA designation, as well as putting in a proclamation, having certain ordinances, having this board, and spending at least $2 per capita on our forestry program. So this is the checkbox that we need to check off. So in 2008, the commission established Arbor Day would always be held the 3rd week of April each year. So we'll need to select a day, keeping in mind that Earth Day happens on April 22nd. Some communities like to put their Earth Day and Arbor Day together. Some communities like to keep them very far apart. So that's up to decide. So what we need to think about is what sort of COVID-friendly observation or celebration could we do? What would it look like? In the past, there's been educational events focused on kids, information tables, and we're open to all kinds of ideas. And it has been mentioned that perhaps this Arbor Day could be done in memorial of Barbara Livingston. So today we just need to decide on what type of event type and the date, and then we can get to work on that as a full council or as an ad hoc subcommittee. So what type of event would we like to have? We need to plant at least one tree.
Right. I would like to. I'd like to. Timing kind of an issue because I'd like it to be something where we can have the community involved.
Which is kind of a struggle. We will be outside and we can be 6 feet apart, but at some point in the event, everyone would need to be together for instruction or a demonstration or the reading of the proclamation, which kind of puts us into the realm of having a crowd. So we could also do something innovative. We could have a virtual Arbor Day. We could plant a tree with step-by-step instructions on how to do it properly. Or we could a newsletter, something Friday letter, the pine cone for write-up. So the sky could be the limit. And nobody's jumping in with any ideas.
This is great. I don't know if you're interested in the public jumping in at this point, or you want us to hold back.
Darlene nodded yes.
Yes.
Yes, hold back, or yes, jump in.
Jump in.
Okay. Okay. To me, a virtual event doesn't cut it for an Arbor Day. Personally, I think I'm a proponent of tactile things that people can sense with whether it's their smell or their hands or whatever. And I realize we don't want everybody touching the same thing, but I think incorporating lots of different things. Maybe the location could be Devendorf Park. So we get local people as well as people that are coming to visit and educate the people that are visiting, because the people that visit end up buying houses here. So I would like to see a component that would be an academic component, a component that would be something for kids to actually put together something, whether it's a collage out of things that they find in or a scavenger hunt around. There's lots of different trees and seeds and leaves and twigs and bark types in Devendorf Park. We could have a photographic scavenger hunt where they run around and they take pictures of the different things on a list and come back and have some type of a prize for those kids that achieve a certain number of those things. But it has to pique the interest of all walks of life, young, old, from toddler to 90 years old. So it can be a couple of different tables that there's, stations that people go to. And definitely there ought to be a place somewhere in the park that we could plant a tree.
I think those are all great ideas, and I don't know if maybe what we should do is have an ad hoc committee. That's how we did it the last 2 times. One of them we were able to accomplish since I've been on the Forest and Beach Commission. So once we got to do it, and we did it at the North Dunes, and last year we had some really great plans to do it up at the Forest Theater, and they of course all fell apart. So I agree with Ramey that I think this should be when we can be in person, which is probably going to cause some sort of a postponement in time. However, I do think we're starting to open up. And I think Devendorf Park could be the most wonderful place to do it this year. For all the reasons Ramey said and all the things we could do, and we could set up for both the kids and the planting of a tree. And I'm hoping Sarah could find us a really great place to plant a tree there. The Carmel Residents Association has, the board has just passed dedicating a bench at Devendorf Park to Barbara Livingston, so we could incorporate the honoring Barbara and everything she's done for the forest at the same time. So I think timing is I think the place is a perfect idea. I think timing is going to be the biggest issue, and that's all I have to say about it.
So technically, Arbor Day can be whenever you want it to be. The Arbor Day Foundation doesn't set it for each community. So last week was Arbor Day for California. So if you want to change what the previous commissions had established, I think this year would be appropriate for that, potentially moving it towards the fall. JC has his hand up.
I think that'd be great, and I think that we could put it together if anybody wants to discuss it, who wants to be on an ad hoc committee. I would certainly volunteer to be on it, and we can kind of go from there and then make a presentation back to the commission as we get closer to knowing when we can do it. JC?
Yeah, I would just say that we've, at the last city council meeting, they canceled basically all events through July, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if it went beyond that. So, but we just have to recognize, and it sounds like the forester is on board, and whoever might want to run the ad hoc committee, the realities of a date is something that we are going to be looking at, most likely the fall or maybe even early winter. But I'm happy. I love to throw a good party, so I'm happy to be a part of the ad hoc committee.
So it sounds like everyone's okay with it not being the 3rd week in April, and that we can come together to plan for something past July.
Yes.
So the ad hoc committee members so far are JC and Darlene, and I'm pretty sure I can volunteer Ramey, right?
Yes, the Friends of Carmel Forest would love to be a part of it.
Okay, so I'll put together a time when we can get together. We might want to snag 1, 2, 3, 4. We might want to snag 2 more members, just so we're a little bit more diverse and spread out. So a couple more community members. Then we'll start planning from there. Oh, and I forgot to mention that PG&E would like to be involved and can sponsor the event in some way.
That's awesome. Any other comment on our Arbor Day celebration? Okay, so an ad hoc committee's been formed, and we will get together and report back to the Forest and Beach Commission as soon as we get some firm ideas about when we can proceed with the planning and the participation of the community. And I've just lost my agenda.
The forester's report's next.
Thank you. Can I have Can we have the forester's report?
That's fine. So we can put it up on the screen for you. We had one tree failure up on the north side of town last month. It basically just fell over. It was rotten at the base. It was a deciduous tree. It didn't damage anything. We had another tree that was splitting in half under a power line that needed immediate removal. And then we had 3 noticeable branches come down on Santa Lucia, and then 2 more on Lincoln that were rather interesting. Large trees in the right-of-way, oaks, and a delivery truck struck the trees. And I wouldn't say it's not like a UPS truck. This would be like a semi-truck almost, that tall. And where it came down Lincoln from first and approached second, hit the trees, ripped 2 of the trees in half, and continued driving another half of a block, and the entire top of the container of the truck was completely ripped open. Very dramatic. I can send you photos if you're interested. But a police report was filed, so we'll follow up on the recouping the damages for those 2 trees. We continue to add points into our inventory. And we've already spoken about the routes that were cut at Casanova and 13th. We cleaned up the rest of the debris from the late January storms, hanging branches and things all over the place. We had some little trees blow over, so we fixed those. We've been working more with PG&E on their line clearance projects. Right now, they're doing 8 removals of very large, very dead pine trees underneath the power lines. And they reach out to us and say, hey, are you cool with us taking this all the way out? And of course we are, because they're dead trees. And we put on a small yellow sign on the tree, just so people are notified that PG&E will be removing it. Carmel Cares resumed their activities in February. They've been working in Devendorf Park to remove all of the ivy and to prune some of the shrubs. So we're making progress on battling back the ivy. In terms of private and development activities, we're going on with permits as normal. Our lots continue to meet the density requirements for replanting, so not as many plantings were required. So here, you're going to see that the numbers don't add up necessarily. So we get permits requests, we might get 13, but we're actually removing 18 trees. So one permit can have multiple trees on it. So that's why sometimes these numbers don't necessarily add up the way you think they would add up. So our restocking percentage so far this year hasn't been so great because most of the lots are meeting their density requirements. So again, our required replantings, we're only a couple months in, so you'll see hopefully our lines go up a little further. February was a condensed month. Number one, it's a short month, and we had a 4-day holiday for President's Day. So not quite as much work as normal. So you can see we're starting to plant our trees here through the beginning of the year. So we're starting to get in about 4 or 5 a week at this point. So that number will jump up next month. We've been doing some removals, mostly again, pine trees that have succumbed to pitch canker that are pretty much all the way dead, and then some pruning projects. So do you have any questions for me from the month of February?
Sarah?
Yeah.
This is Rami.
Hi.
I don't know. Is the questions open to the public?
Darlene?
Sure, the questions are open to the public if the commissioners don't have any. We didn't have any. Go ahead, Rami.
I'm just curious why we're not replacing city trees at a greater percentage than we are. If you look, at the history there, the trees just don't get replanted.
Yeah, so let me put something on the screen real quick. So we are replanting. Let me search one more thing here real quick. We are replanting in the right of way, and we're trying to do it in the cooler, rainier months. And let me find my. So here, let me show you my map in 1 second. Let me turn off my parcels. Sites. That's not the search I wanted. Right now, we have identified about, I think we're up to close to like 32 different right-of-way sites that we're planning to plant this year. So we're not trying to leave the right-of-way vacant, that's for sure. But we are switching to some smaller trees to plant up the power lines. But no, we're replanting. So we started on the north side of town, I think on San Carlos. So we drove up and down every street looking for planting spaces until I think we reached maybe Camino Real. And we've been putting out stakes where we want trees to go about a week or so before we plant the trees, so that if somebody definitely doesn't want one in that spot, they can contact us and tell us no. So we had one person say no because they wanted it for a parking space. So we are putting effort into planting the right of way.
What are the smaller scale trees that you're planting underneath power lines?
Yeah, right now we have some standardized and clumped red buds. And right now we also have some strawberry trees. Those are just the first round that we picked up from the nursery.
The red buds are the Occidental, the Western one?
Yes.
Okay.
I think for a second, Commissioner Goodell had his hand up.
I'm good, thank you.
Oh, okay. So next up is the Public Works.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm not kidding you. This thing has just gone haywire today between the phone and the iPad. It's nuts. But our next item of business is the Public Works report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sarah, could you please put up on the screen the cover page of the report? Just had it.
Yeah, of course you asked me to put it up right after I close it. Okay.
Timing is everything. Okay, I'll get started. City Council met on March the 2nd. A couple things noteworthy to this commission. First of all, Council accepted a grant of $3,950 from the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District for our rain garden, which is right outside of Public Works office on Junipero. We tried to get it started 2 years ago, and then got bogged down with other things, and then we tried to start it right at the time of COVID. So we haven't touched it since, but now we have a funding source, and we'll have a little sign that this is a demonstration garden and how you can keep water on site in a very aesthetic way. This also, if you recall, back at the, I think it was the January meeting, Dr. Price was was on Junipero and 13th, and in their backyard there was 3 pittosporum trees that were cut down without approval. Went to this commission. The commission assessed a fee of $4,700 for 2 of the 3 trees, and $1,100 for the arborist report, for a total of $5,800. Also required a landscape plan, a tree mitigation plan, or tree management plan, and to replant at least 3 trees. If you recall, at the time, the applicant kind of protested that and thought that would rather put the money into trees themselves rather than into the city's coffers. At the city council meeting, it was appealed. It was a long council meeting, which might have had something to do with this, and this was the very last item. But anyway, the city council changed or lowered the assessment to $2,500 total. That includes the penalty and it includes the value of the tree plus the arborist report. She still has to plant the 3 trees. She still needs a landscape plan. She still needs a tree management plan. But the bottom line is that they lowered the fee just about in half. Also, we have a special council meeting coming up March the 16th, which is Tuesday evening. It'll be the first time I'll be presenting the capital improvement plan for the new fiscal year coming up. There's not a whole lot of things related to forestry and parks, but there's a couple. One is that we're asking for money to start the design of 3 of 8 projects in Mission Trails Nature Preserve that will help with stream stability and reduce erosion and help with drainage, especially down on the south end of Mission Trails near Rio Road. So that project, I think, will be successful. There's also going to be a greenhouse gas emission study for the climate committee. So that affects all of us. And just support with Carmel, Friends of the Forest, and Carmel Cares, doing several park projects. I think Sarah just mentioned the work they've already got started on Devendorf Park, and that will continue well into next fiscal year. So if you want to have comments to the city council, you're encouraged to attend the meeting next week on Tuesday and ask for funding for parks or whatever your pleasure is. Second is the climate committee meeting on February 18th. Just 2 quick things. AMBAG, which is the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, presented the city's 2018 greenhouse gas inventory. So I think the point here is that there's momentum now with the climate committee and starting to address it with technical reports and plans for how we're going to address that in the long term. Also, the Central Coast Community Energy presented their climate action initiatives and energy procurement strategy, which was actually more interesting than it sounds. The Climate Committee of March the 18th, which will be next week, was canceled. So no meeting, but they'll be resuming back in April. Item C, update on the volunteer organizations. We already talked about Carmel Cares doing a great job on Devendorf, but they're also continuing to work on the scenic pathway. Hopefully you've been down there quite a bit now and have seen that there's a noticeable difference, essentially the whole length of the pathway at this point. They're also working with what we call median minders. I think we mentioned this before when Dale Byrne was presenting. So these are people that live nearby medians, big and small, all around town, that are taking care of them. That program is growing. It's becoming very successful. And we recommend to have it, maybe not necessarily the next meeting, but next couple of meetings, like to have that be a focus or a special topic for this commission when we can get that scheduled. Carmel Cares will be working on this split rail fencing on Forest Hill Park. Is that the west side, Sarah?
Yes, on the west side from the playground moving north.
Right, so that would be much needed help. And so that's it really for volunteers this month. And miscellaneous, something that kind of came up earlier in one of the public hearings. So I've been meeting with the city attorney's office. They're doing an in-depth review of the tree ordinance. First of all, we have two ordinances related to trees and shrubs. I think they're both called the same thing. One's in the zoning chapter of the municipal code. One is in the streets and right-of-way in the municipal code. Lots of there's some definite conflicts between the two. And in my opinion, there was not enough teeth that the commission can assess penalties or fines. You can assess the valuation of the tree, the cost for removal, the mitigation, planting a bunch of new trees, that type of thing. But technically, the commission does not have the authority per the current ordinance to assess fees for a penalty or in a punitive way. I don't know if we're going to change that. We're looking at trying to get something that allows a lot more flexibility because, as we've commented, they seem to be taking trees down and asking for forgiveness rather than begging for permission in the first place. So that's a chronic problem, and we're seeing it now for a couple of years. So we want something that can raise the stakes a bit as well as have teeth. So that's a work in progress. I want to keep you posted. To be honest, I was a little bit uncomfortable when this commission was determining a methodology for the evaluation of the tree at the meeting. So I'll be talking to the city attorney about that. Your intentions, of course, are right on the money, and we certainly that $47,000 seems to be a whole lot more reasonable than what was it, $13,000. So I hear you loud and clear. I'm trying to get that, give this commission a lot more, again, teeth and a lot more flexibility in assessing fees and whatnot. So that's all I have for my report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Casey, I see your hand is up.
Thanks. Bob, and on the 16th, you're presenting the budget. Is that what that is?
The capital improvement program. Well, first, the director of budgets will present how much money we have or don't have over the next 5 years. We are looking at starting up our capital program again, of capital projects. Small dollars. I mean, this current year we had $16,000. The year before was $4.4 million. So you can see it dropped significantly during COVID. Now we're kind of going back to the $800,000 to $1 million range tentatively. There's been no projects confirmed at this time, but we're starting to get a little bit more revenue than anticipated, and now's the time. And we're also looking at returning some of the staff, hopefully, as well as paying down some of the liability on our pension obligation. So there's a lot of need for money, but the revenue side is looking a little better than we had anticipated for this current fiscal year and into next fiscal year.
Could we consider then because I know it's been a conversation topic now for a little while since actually our forester came on board, is requesting some funding for a new forest management plan. Could that be considered part of a capital improvement?
Yes. Yes, it's already on the list.
It is. Okay, great.
Presentation. It's not recommended for funding next year because limitation. I mean, I'll be presenting 37 projects that are all very important, including the forest management plan. But obviously we can't afford them all. But at least it will again be presented to the council. I think it was 2 years ago, or maybe last year. And so it's still on their radar. It's just a matter of timing until it's funded.
Okay, I just have one other question, and you didn't present anything about this, but I think this is tied back to you. That in the city council, that whole discussion around this new signage and this funding that's available for signage for bicyclists, et cetera, can any of those funds be used to educate the public about our forest and beach at all in any way, in terms of directional, like, hey, this way to this kind of tree, or?
Yes, absolutely. Any Carmel point of interest, that's within our prerogative to design. So yes, in my mind, I had intended to, this way to Devendorf Park, this way to the Mission, this way to Scenic, this way, so yes, Mission Trail for sure. So yes, it'll be directions to the Sunset Centers, the City Hall, the parks, the Scenic Trail, that type of thing.
Okay, and how could we get maybe more specific than that? Would that be something that we should discuss with Sarah, to discuss with you, or what's the?
I'm managing the project for now, which means it's not happening. So we're trying to get some staffing back so we can begin some of our projects. This is one of them that's already funded now. It needs to be designed. It needs to be project specific. So at this particular location, it will say this. Once we have that, and the type of sign is going to be made of wood, then we have to take it to the. We can certainly take it to the Forest and Beach Commission. We have to take it to the Planning Commission, and then the City Council to adopt, and then we can actually start installing them. So again, we're at the very beginning, but at least we have funding to get started.
Thanks.
Any other questions, Mr.?
This is Brian. Hey, Bob, just a couple of questions. So again, going back to your issue about, looking at the issue around penalties and that. How, as Forest and Beach Committee members, can we help in this process? Because I have Jeff Barron right down 2 blocks or 2 houses down from me. I mean, the city, is this going to be a city council type of decision tree down road? It's not going to be us making that decision. You'll be presenting this because, again, I think more and more of our meetings are going to be wrapped around these making decisions around tree damage. And we're kind of, I think our viewpoint to the residents is not a real strong one right now because we kind of have a hodgepodge way of coming up with our assessments about, what the damage is in this or that. I mean, we do have a process, but we kind of go off of it when we see things don't kind of make sense.
Right.
And again, I think having the city council understand that we've got to have some real accountability here, whether it's the contractors, other hired arborists, et cetera, beyond just the owners and penalties wrapped around that, where we really have something to go through that has some oomph to it. Is that a city council, knowledge base that's going to have to happen?
Right, you're a couple of steps ahead. Right now, we talked to the city attorney's office. They've assigned it to a specialist. So it's kind of like in the legal domain. The guy I talked to at the lawyer's office was impressed with how convoluted our ordinances are now. That we have two different ones called the same name. So it's kind of a mess. They're going to be cleaning that up. Once that is done, then it can be converted into the actual ordinance. A draft of the ordinance should be presented to you, to the Planning Commission, and then City Council will adopt it with I think it's 2 public hearings. Is that right, Mike? But yeah, I think it's the first hearing and then the second hearing and then it's adopted. So we have a ways to go, but the decision to implement that ordinance will be the City Council's decision at some point.
Okay. Then the only question I had to ask as well was, when we come up with all these penalties and they get paid, what's the balance that we have out there right now for all this tree damage that gets paid into the city? Is there a fund balance for that we have? Is that something Sarah manages? Or when we talk about, we want a forest management plan, yet it's not in the budget, yet we've got $150,000 sitting in tree damage funds.
That's a very interesting point. I think I'll throw that into the presentation. That's a very great, yes, we do have some money. We did have to pay back Mr. Stepanek, the overage, because his amount was reduced. The County May amount is still in the in our account. And basically the tree work that we're doing now is really within our operating budget. We're squeaking through with the current year. But yes, we do have a hefty savings in our tree reforestation plan. And frankly, that's a brilliant idea to, I'll see if I can, what's the word? Do some conniving and get the, what's that?
Report on it. Let us know what the dollar value is.
Finesse. I think the word finesse.
Finesse. I was thinking clean, but that's close.
So I don't have the fund total, but I keep track of the bonds and how long they're being held for, so I can get the fund balance. One thing is, I haven't been made aware that there's an ordinance that protects that special revenue fund only for use related to forest, beach, and parks. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, City Council at this point could appropriate it for a different use, right?
I would be very surprised if they were to actually do that. It is it's a special account within the general fund. So yes, like if there's an emergency or whatever, they could use the money elsewhere. I think that there'd be a long line out the door of people commenting on that if they were to do such a thing or consider such a thing. Or an alternative would be if we spend all that money really fast.
Any other comments? No? Our next item is going to be future agenda items. Is there any agenda items anybody wants to discuss to have added to our next few meetings? Yes.
I have a couple. I mentioned Carmel Cares vendors. So we'll have a presentation on that in the future, not sure when. And also maybe Sarah's one you were thinking of PG&E pruning. How they prune, to what extent, are they getting carried away, that issue.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hopefully we won't have any more tree problems. Hopefully we don't have to have any more hearings.
I was just thinking that it sounds like we could, if someone could dig into what happened to the business permit reviews that used to take place and maybe bring that back so that this could be for discussion and determine how we can go forward with keeping track of and whether or not it's, it counts, at least we as a commission are keeping track of those that are violating, especially blatant violations of city the city direction. So anyway, we can figure out some history on that'd be great.
Well, great. Any other discussion before we adjourn the meeting? No? Well, I thank you all, and I'm hoping something's going to happen and they're going to let us go back to chambers so we don't have to all sit here with telephones, iPads, computers that don't work and not being able to see each other, because I really miss the public forum.
Thanks, Darlene.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.